buongiorno a tutti.
Good afternoon to all of you. I just steal 2 minutes of your time, but because he's the star, I'm just the arm, he's the mind, and together we've been setting up, drawing up, and implementing this project. Mind the Bridge, Marinucci's project, is very much in line with the philosophy that is underlying Corriere della Sera. It's a way of disseminating culture in addition to focusing on entrepreneurial skills. The more we have projects of this kind, the more we focus on this culture for civilization. So congratulations for the Mind the Bridge project. Let me dive into the core of the matter now. Probably we were all very creative kids from the faces I see here in this room. Maybe we were very much staying on our own, and we were very creative. We didn't mingle with other kids. And then we grew up on our own. We were somehow loonies, crazy people, but when you put many crazy people together, you end up with a very creative forum. Roberto Bonzio is an Italian version of Forrest Gump. He started off, well, he left Italy and went to the US with the entire family. And he started to engage in this project that we are now showing around the world. As Roberto Coloban was saying this morning, it's not a matter of age, it's a matter of mind. You can start at any age and come up with a very strong and powerful communication project. And I wrap it up because I want to hand it over to Roberto, who will share the technology with you, the technology side with you. He has a web TV project in mind, and I just ask you to look at this project not just as an adventure, not just as somebody's dream, opening up a window, well, an Italian window on the rest of the world, on a global universe. He will tell us how Italians, even in the 1800s until the present day, were really creative, were really ingenious, were really skillful, even when they went abroad. So please do listen to him. We're all self-made men somehow. We are all entrepreneurs within ourselves. So it is also a very powerful communication project. It's a brand strategy project, I would even say, that if supported could be, again, a very powerful moment of creative truth. So let me switch the button, let me hand it over to Roberto Bonzio, and then he will be here with us in the very flesh, bone and flesh.
C'erano ancora le macchine da scrivere, linotype e piombo in tipografia quando ho cominciato a fare questo mestiere. I miei primi articoli li ho scritti con la Olivetti di mio padre, cronista. Sì, era qualche anno fa. Poi è arrivato il computer, ma quando ho deciso di lasciare la redazione per un progetto oltreoceano, nemmeno il computer bastava più. E allora ho dovuto imparare a usare molti altri strumenti. Grazie a internet ho preparato tutto da solo, trovando casa, auto, scuola per i figli, tutti i contatti, e siamo partiti con tutta la famiglia. Volevo inseguire lo spirito di impresa di tanti italiani, capaci di sfidare mondi sconosciuti e di percorrere strade nuove. Grazie a un amico antropologo italiano allo Smithsonian Institution ho trovato alcune storie fantastiche di italiani di ieri nel West. Ma quello spirito l'ho ritrovato su una nuova frontiera proiettata nel futuro, quella dell'innovazione e dell'high tech, a Silicon Valley. Veterani come Federico Fergin o Roberto Crea, tra i padri del microchip e dell'insulina sintetica. Giovani imprenditori e manager come Fabrizio Capobianco di Funambol e Marco Marinucci di Google, che con il loro successo tentano di costruire un ponte di conoscenze e affari tra Italia e Stati Uniti. Incontrare questi italiani di frontiera è stata un'esperienza straordinaria per capire come il loro talento e la loro creatività abbiano un valore eccezionale in campo globale. ma anche per individuare, grazie a loro, cattive abitudini, luoghi comuni di cui spesso non siamo nemmeno consapevoli, un modo di pensare al quale siamo abituati e che invece frena l'innovazione, penalizza il merito e blocca chi sa immaginare il futuro. Ora ho iniziato a far vedere il mio lavoro in giro per l'Italia, facendo scoperte non meno sorprendenti, con i tanti italiani di frontiera in patria. Giovani, innovativi, capaci anche di progetti di grande valore internazionale, ma abituati nel nostro paese a muoversi controcorrente, tra mille sgambetti e spesso ignorati dai media tradizionali. Ora Italiani di Frontiera, dopo un blog, conferenze multimediali, un libro in cantiere, diventa anche una web TV, per mettere a disposizione di tutti lo straordinario contributo degli italiani di Silicon Valley. Per far conoscere e incontrare questi italiani di Silicon Valley e i tanti straordinari italiani di frontiera che sono in mezzo a noi. Cioè che gli amici di Shadow mi hanno fatto sembrare una roba seria e mi fa veramente piacere.
It does sound so serious now that I listen to it. I've already explained everything in my video. I can tell you about my success story as a journalist, but having said that, how many of you went hitchhiking in their life? At least, how many in the last 5 years hitchhiked? I think this is an indicator for optimism, maybe mistrust, that it characterizes our society. So we need a different society, a more open-minded society. I dream a lot, and dreaming for me is like subscribing to a movie forum, to a movie club. I dreamt of cycling up hills, but it was so steep that the hill turned into a wall, and I dreamt of going into a house that was not really welcoming me. There was ice frozen water, and there was no ceiling. It was a terrible dream, and at the same time a wonderful dream. There was candy sugar in that house as well, and so somehow that house was across the border, was somewhere away from Italy. That's why I took my family with me and went to the States. Internet doesn't give you dreams for free, but gives you the opportunity to fulfill your dreams. Thanks to the internet, I fulfilled my dreams, and I found the object of my dreams there a few years ago. And then I kept monitoring and nurturing that dream, and last year I went for it and went and picked it up. This is where my journey starts. Our journey starts.
Perché me lo ricordo un po' come un sogno, veramente.
I really, if I think about it, it does feel like a dream. It was a windy day, a nice windy day, San Francisco Bay, ideal conditions to really sail. This is the military cemetery before the Golden Gate. I was looking for a grave there.
Tomba del Conte Carlo Camillo di Rudio.
Of a Count Carlo Camillo di Rudio from Belluno, same area as I come from. A Forrest Gump of the 1800s. He was 16, and he was an Austrian cadet, left his uniform during the Cinque Giornate revolutionary days, and he went through all sorts of experiences and went through he took part in the attack to Napoleon III. He was sentenced to life imprisonment, and then he survived an epidemic, went back home, took his wife with him, had a letter of Giuseppe Mazzini with him, and went to New York. Went there, the war was in progress at the time, and he became an officer with General Custer, and as he was of noble origins, people mistrusted him, but he fought in the Little Big Horn battle. And they were really, lots of people were killed there. His horse was killed, and he managed to hide away and managed to really report about that massacre because he was there. And then Giacomo Costantino Beltrami from Bergamo. He was disappointed by the restoration, went to the Mississippi, was a lonely soul somehow, went through the swamps in the US and collected some manufacts that are now kept in a museum. And then he started walking and going up a river, walking along the banks of this river. And he had an umbrella with him in the Indians, the American Indians, and they thought that was a magic tool he had with him, so they didn't attack him. So he managed to really follow this stream, this river, and get to the source. And then maybe he was the one who inspired Fenimore Cooper for The Last of the Mohicans. And then Carlo Gentile, a Neapolitan photographer, went to San Francisco first and took pictures. And took the pictures back to Italy and thought, they're gonna really, I'm gonna make money out of these pictures, my fortune out of these pictures. He met an Indian boy. He was being auctioned by kidnappers. He paid for the ransom and made him his son. Carlos Montezuma was the name of that child. Went to work with Buffalo Bill. Then there was a La Scala ballerina, a dancer, very famous in the Wild West. Carlos was very talented, and he was unable to carry on his education, and he was the first Indian to fight for Indian American civil rights. He was very grateful to his father, who instead was very unsuccessful. His office was destroyed and died in 1893, probably committed suicide. This anthropologist working at the Smithsonian Museum really found out about all of these wonderful stories. And in addition to these wonderful stories of Italians that lived across the border, I met Silicon Valley people. Roberto Crea is one of them.
L'impatto con la California fu immediato, faceva molto caldo, un sole stupendo, questa impressione delle palme dell'aeroporto di Los Angeles con tutta la gente in maglietta contrastava naturalmente con il mio cappotto blu che ancora indossavo con le mie 2 valigie. Mi venne a prendere un ragazzino che poteva avere probabilmente 24 anni, in maglietta, scarpe da tennis e jeans. E io invece ero in cravatta con l'abito scuro. Questo ragazzino si presentò come il professor Keiichi Takura, direttore del laboratorio della City of Hope Medical Center, e io fui completamente meravigliato e in un certo senso provavo un certo senso di entusiasmo, e mi capitò di incontrare un signore con maglietta a strisce, capelli ricci, scarpe da tennis e jeans, e mi cominciai a chiacchierare con lui credendo che fosse appunto una persona addetta alle pulizie. Dopo pochi minuti venne il professor Itakura e mi disse: vedo che hai già incontrato il professor Herb Boyer. E naturalmente per me fu una sorpresa incredibile, cioè vedere che il famoso professor Boyer, che io mi immaginavo una personalità molto più severa e più lontana, era questo signore cordiale, alla mano, amichevole, che si era fermato per parlare con me nel corridoio di un ospedale. E il mio primo impatto naturalmente con la California, con la scienza della California, non solo fu incredibile, ma fu produttivo al massimo. Dopo appena 3 mesi riuscì a risolvere un problema molto importante, che era quello della sintesi e della purificazione di frammenti che poi devono essere utilizzate per mettere assieme il gene sintetico, e questo mi portò a un grande rispetto da parte dei miei colleghi e mi permise oltretutto di essere uno degli autori del primo articolo scientifico che poi apparse sulla rivista internazionale Science di questo famoso esperimento della prima produzione di una proteina mammifera in un batterio.
Tutto che avete sentito è stata la pietra miliare delle biotecnologie, la nascita di Genentech, oggi oltre 10 miliardi di dollari.
Was the outset of Genentech is serial entrepreneur and 10 billion the worth of his the value of his business, and this is Federico Fagin.
La differenza tra un paese come Taiwan e l'Italia è una differenza culturale, una differenza proprio di valori. È che in Italia c'è una mentalità un po' particolare, no? Dove se uno ha successo viene visto con sospetto. Se uno ha successo, la gente pensa che il proprio successo è togliere qualcosa a qualcun altro. Non è che il successo venga visto con ammirazione, viene visto con sospetto. Mentre negli Stati Uniti il successo è in Taiwan, il successo è importante perché la gente capisce che il successo di una ditta e di chi ha fatto partire questa ditta in realtà crea benessere, crea ricchezza materiale per tutti. In Italia c'è l'idea che c'è una torta finita e che se io prendo una fetta più grande, in realtà la tolgo, faccio sì che la fetta degli altri diventi più piccola, perché c'è solo una torta grande così. Mentre in America e in altri paesi avanzati è chiaro che se uno lavora con attività, eccetera, crea nuove industrie, eccetera, la torta diventa più grande e quindi anche se la fetta che uno prende è più grande, la fetta degli altri è anche più grande. Questa mentalità è una mentalità che alla fine impedisce al paese di veramente espandersi e fiorire.
Di solito sappiamo fare quello in cui gli inglesi sono così bravi, che è il gioco di squadra. Purtroppo in Italia non sappiamo collaborare, forse non ci fidiamo, non siamo abituati a fidarci degli altri e questi sono difetti che bisognerebbe riuscire a curare. Purtroppo questo guaio l'abbiamo anche nelle università. Io sono molto ammirato di come qui la scelta dei nuovi professori sia legata esclusivamente alla ricerca del migliore. In Italia con i concorsi universitari non si riesce a funzionare in quel modo, perché i concorsi universitari sono normalmente controllati da alcuni personaggi, figure centrali dell'argomento, e c'è la tendenza a portare sempre i propri allievi. Ora, quando si portano i propri allievi, si portano le proprie idee, cioè non si portano le novità, si porta la roba vecchia, no? È molto semplice, le idee bisogna sapere accettare quelle nuove, creare quelle nuove, dimenticando le vecchie. Ma se invece noi prendiamo i nostri allievi, li mettiamo in cattedra perché continuino le nostre idee, cioè i nostri figli sono le nostre idee e i nostri allievi, le università si fermano.
Io mi sono laureata a Trieste in fisica e poi ho fatto un dottorato qui a Berkeley, quindi ho avuto un po' di esperienza di università sia in Italia che negli Stati Uniti e sono stata anche al MIT per un anno, quindi ho provato l'esperienza anche lì. E conosco molti studenti che vengono dall'Italia, che vengono qui, e la preparazione italiana è molto molto valida, si studia molto bene. La grande differenza che ho notato è che in Italia si tende di meno a fare domande ai professori, a essere creativi. Qui anche come i compiti sono strutturati, bisogna un po' più creare delle cose nuove rispetto a saper ripetere, a dire quello che si è imparato. Ed è comunque un ruolo molto più attivo che negli studenti qui. Magari sanno meno la teoria, però fanno più cose, si fa più cose.
Secondo me ci sono una serie di caratteristiche che ci accomunano. Una è proprio quello di cercare di sfruttare il meglio della nostra cultura originaria, no? Della creatività, del senso di flessibilità, con i punti importanti e principali che siamo riusciti a cogliere in un ambito totalmente diverso come quello della Silicon Valley. Questa idea veramente del give back, che è difficile da tradurre nella nostra cultura, è una cosa che secondo me abbiamo colto in molti, no? Il fatto che quello che apprendi ha tanto più senso quanto più riesci poi a condividerlo nei tuoi spazi di pertinenza e anche dal mondo in cui sei partito.
scopi che mi sono posto nella vita, al di là di fare funambolo, è quello di portare una Silicon Valley in Italia. In Italia abbiamo ingegneri bravissimi, siamo assolutamente competitivi con il resto del mondo per creare un centro di eccellenza del software mondiale in Italia. Una volta fatto ciò, si possa cominciare a creare delle aziende italiane con capitale di ventura americana e il passo successivo è creare capitale di ventura italiana che stanno crescendo. L'hanno fatto in Israele e secondo me possiamo farlo anche in Italia.
Ovviamente ho voluto dare una conclusione ottimistica perché
I really wanted to convey an optimistic message. And this is only part of our journey. So it's not just Silicon Valley. Let us now go ahead. It's my personal interpretation of the pathway I followed. I collected stories and then these are my personal remarks. What do they have in common? What do these characters have in common? This is a Java product manager, a leading company in a niche, software vendor, software design software, very complicated software for a very simple interface to sell products all over the world through other seaweed fuel here, Guido Redelli. The Courage to Dare, Cristina Dalle, working at NASA, trying to contact people who seems far from being reachable. Video and creativity. A video turned into a home movie and was sent to Steve Jobs on the day of the presentation in San Francisco. She was invited and she saw a frame of her video and Steve Jobs ran her video, although he hadn't replied to her mail. Matteo is here with us. From dream to reality. And he can give you practical pieces of advice if you decide to go to Silicon Valley. What do they have in common? They think outside the box. It's a strange ability to really tackle whatever is unexpected and manage it. And you see, even those who are very well experienced and have a long and time-honored track record in Silicon Valley, Fajin and the lady you see there, I know her very well because I married her 23 years ago. And there are obstacles to creativity in our home country. It's conflicts, it's mistrust, the inability to focus on teamwork. This is, I called it Palio di Sienes syndrome. I'm happy to lose if you lose too. That's the wrong mentality. Because it's like when they're running the Sienes Palio, they're not expecting their own district to win. They're happy if other districts lose. And then conflicts to be reconciled. This is the CEO of Digital Kist, very interesting technology of interaction between TV and the web, enhancing creativity, enhancing idea development. It means having to deal with chaos, creative chaos. If you're ready to take off, you mustn't let small obstacles somehow prevent you from really, as I said, taking off. Silicon Valley eliminates friction as a system. Enrico Beltramini wrote a beautiful book. He is an entrepreneur, he is a professor at the Catholic University in Milan, Università Cattolica, and he says Silicon Valley is a state of mind. What is the soul underlying San Francisco? It's a search for utopia. It's like the golden rush, and we have
compiacenti, imbroglioni, geniaci, truffatori, un'umanità assolutamente.
Gold miners, we have people of all races and colors, and they're all converging, they're all looking for this, trying to implement a utopia. It's a small town first that will be turned into a big city. one of these, the inhabitants of these cities, Enrico Caruso, was singing in San Francisco, and this is an Italian we are talking about. Why was he singing? He was singing to really encourage, after an earthquake, he was singing to give support to the rescuers. And there was a bag, there was a cart with vegetables, and he went to San Francisco, and there were people saying, we don't want, in November, you won't find anybody who will want a city to be rebuilt. He put that cart there, he had a bag, he had his vegetable, and started his activity. He started his business. And Amedeo Peter Giannini, this is the person I'm talking about. He laid the foundations for the reconstruction of San Francisco, and he started the first bank. No money was... people couldn't borrow money, and he was the first bank in San Francisco. He really generated an opportunity. He got away from the niche in which the San Francisco people were living, and that became Bank of America eventually.
I'm sorry. Nel corso degli anni,
over the years, he financed United Artists, gave them $2 million, and it was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs that he financed. And this is how Silicon Valley came to life. It became the Garden of America, the vegetable Garden of America. It was all migrants coming from Italy, from European countries. He also put money on the table for the Marshall Plan. When he died, he had less than $500,000. He had very little for himself, but he said, the obsession for money is a problem I don't have. You see at the base of the Bank of America skyscraper, you have this writing. Amedeo said the only business that really matters is being long-sighted, and probably not all banks got inspiration from this quotation, but he really put in place a revolution. There was no mortgage made available for people who needed money. And then he gave money to two former Stanford students. Instead of going to the East Coast, because there was nothing on the West Coast, a long-sighted dean inspired them, and they worked in their garage and started developing a company there, a startup somehow, that was then turned into something that changed San Francisco's philosophy and way of thinking, turned that into an entrepreneurial way of thinking. They used their home oven to really bake the first circuit. Sometimes they had fires in the house, so the neighbors were not very happy. But they really captured the spirit that was in the air in San Francisco, being versatile, being flexible, from the first oscilloscope for the Fantasia movie to handheld computers and calculators and printed circuits. So their home garage not only was a model for other people to come afterwards. This could apply to Apple, Google, YouTube, but it was a historical milestone for the generation of Silicon Valley. And then the H&P model. 4 main cornerstones: open company, constant ongoing innovation, informal relations, and employees that are the main players in the company. And then this is the Olivetti model. One of the most extraordinary Italian corporate models. And they are the same values. And the veterans in Silicon Valley, the so-called petty boys, they all came to the States in the 70s and 80s, and they were working for Olivetti. And then they became experts in a number of fields, serial entrepreneurs, as Mr. Fagin was mentioned before. And this is Giacomo Marini. He was supposed to be one of our guests, but unfortunately cannot be with us. It's a success story from Italy with Logitech. Success story in Silicon Valley. Then he became a venture capital expert. Then Enzo Torresi, Mr. Olivetti, is the one who founded the Olivetti franchise in the US. He really generated the first personal computer in Europe. So fantasy, creativity, and versatility. I used to provide graphic effects. I copied all these graphic effects to come up with tricks to apply to advertising, and I was like a craftsman. I could do everything. I went to DreamWorks, and I was really struck. Everybody knew everything about each and every business niche. I said, I'll never be able to compete. I'll be a loser. But the idea that I had been a pioneer, that I was a craftsman, that he was a craftsman, enabled him to really tap these resources and to be a success story. Then he went to the Smithsonian Museum, the dream for all anthropologists. And I said, they'll never want me, or so he was telling me. And then instead he was hired because he was coming from Italy, because he was considered to be a very open-minded person. Same applies to these brothers, a whole family of brothers. They went from Valvasone to Berkeley. It was 1902. They were picking oranges. But they were wasted hands for oranges, so they passed on to doing something else. Where in 1915 they went to an air show, and they wanted to build engines for airplanes. And it was the first tourism flight from San Francisco to the Yosemite Park. And then they decided they didn't want to have anything more to do with planes, but they wanted to leverage their wonderful technology to build pumps. And there they solved huge irrigation problems, and people are still grateful to them. One of the brothers had a handicapped child, a disabled child, and the very same technology was used and deployed to somehow help the son, the disabled son. And here we end up with a brand name that is associated with hedonism worldwide, but it was the dream of a father to try and help his son live better. Look at Silicon Valley, look at San Francisco. There's something we may not be able to fully grasp unless we talk about the hippie heritage. What does this have to do with enterprises, with the business world? Such a beautiful picture. And this is a topic that's been dealt with extensively over the last few years, cyberculture and everything. It's a theme, it's a subject that is not somehow unheard of. In Italy, 1968 is associated with swear words, with negative ideas, with laziness. As if it only had produced, as if we were thinking of the French Revolution and only associating it with the guillotine. These are the products. This is the outcome of the Beat generation. Look at this. Look at the pictures. This is the temple, city lights. And these poets really perceived the unsatisfaction that was very widespread in the American society, that was very rich, very wealthy, but unsatisfied. And they were looking for different values in a very disordered way, but that's how they expressed that through their lyrics. You see Getty. This was one of the ancestors of an Italian family coming from Bergamo.
Tanto una strada più concreta, che è quella appunto della controcultura, della contestazione studentesca e del movimento hippie. Cosa c'entra tutto questo con i pionieri della tecnologia e dell'innovazione? Semplicemente perché questi pionieri della tecnologia e dell'innovazione lavoravano su macchine e su apparecchi, ma la loro cultura umanistica era questa, quella di pensare controcorrente e di scegliere modelli diversi. È per questo che quelli che erano i computer armadioni tipo A9000 degli anni 60, e si immaginava sarebbero stati in quegli anni strumenti in mano a pochissimi, invasivi e tutto sommato discriminatori per le persone, è per la cultura di fondo di questi pionieri della tecnologia che questi strumenti sono diventati invece uno straordinario mezzo di potenzialità delle capacità individuali e anche dell'interazione. Ecco due fricchettoni famosi che sono i due Steve di Apple, ovviamente. Bene, questo ci porta, questo discorso sulla controcultura, all'ultima parte del nostro discorso che ho intitolato Asini celebri. Scherzo, quelli all'alto sono i miei figli e non sono stati asini per niente. Francesca è stata una delle due che ha fatto la recita alla fine anno a scuola in inglese, non essendo di madrelingua. Alessandro gli hanno dato anche un bellissimo astuccio vuoto, non potevano dargli il diploma, ma ha fatto tutta la cerimonia alla Ghana School. Sono andati bene, e non parlo per loro per dire quanto bravi sono, ma per dire che sono stati un po' una metafora degli italiani, che quando si applicano in queste situazioni di competizione possono essere bravi e bravissimi. Ma nella classe di Alessandro lui era l'unico italiano su 350 e c'era un'italo-americana, gli asiatici erano almeno un terzo, e quindi questo è un altro aspetto di riflessione.
In a class of 100 or over 300 people, and this is a real donkey I'm interested in. This was the famous model that was used to design Shrek. This donkey's got very short legs, and considering that we have to remember that here Lucignolo in the Pinocchio story was a donkey, we should remember that transgression at times is done by those who don't know the rules, who are probably ignorant, as we call them in Italian, donkeys or asses. So transgression is the opportunity to go over the line and do something different. We Italians should educate our children, should look around, and the extraordinary thing that we can find by looking around, and what I've personally discovered by taking my project around, is that all over the world there are extraordinary Italians. This is a person who created an extraordinary application for iPhone who's capable of detecting noise. It is not by chance that a large number of people can get together on the network and detect the level of noise of a given city, because that has a direct impact on the real estate value of the neighborhood. This is another extraordinary Italian whom I met in this fantastic place called H Farm. Cesaro Marini from the Smithsonian that we've seen before, and Mr. Donadoni, and they decided to set up an incredible incubator. Go there blindfolded, then you open your eyes and look around and you think you are in Silicon Valley, and instead you are in Treviso. So a startup, if it's based on a good idea, I'm sure they will be able to break new ground and to make interesting progress and be successful. So why should being Italians be important for the rest of the world? I asked Steve Jobs, and he showed a beautiful video talking to Stanford students, saying it's important to do things on the spur of the moment, without thinking how much money you can make tomorrow, but what you do today will help you take the next step tomorrow. It's as if your life is made up of a number of dots that you can connect only later on. So this guy who went to college and decided to drop out in spite of the fact his father had invested all his savings in his education, well, he dropped out of college, and in a few years' time he invented an operating system that made his fortune, and so he said, stay hungry and stay crazy. This is not his own statement. He borrowed it from this author who kind of was able to think or imagine the internet before the internet had been invented, because he put together sort of a catalog of all of the possible curious things that somebody could have been interested in. This is one of the top experts in education. You can find his conferences on the network, and he thinks that school kills creativity, because schooling or education in the West world is essentially based on a method that was tailored to the Industrial Revolution. It is tailored to people who are to carry out repetitive tasks. Things such as music or dance are considered as absolutely ancillary tasks because they are useless. But in 5 years' time, we do not know how the world will look like when children who are now in first grade will retire or are retired, the world must have changed completely in the meantime. So the road of creativity is the road that allows you to try, fail, and try again with something else, with a different experiment. In the 30s, a girl was taken to the doctor because she had huge learning problems. Luckily, she bumped into the right doctor, and so she was left alone in the room with the radio on, and this girl wasn't sick at all, and she started to dance, and she became a star in the ballet industry, and she was absolutely creative and brilliant, and if she hadn't met that doctor, probably she would have been treated all her life with drugs. This is another very interesting video channel that was created directly online for the rest of the world to get to know the Arab world and vice versa. And she kind of copied the top 10 by the famous top 10 ranking by David Letterman, and she thought she looked a bit like Madonna, and so she decided to put all these things together to create this video channel so as to eliminate the conflict that are kind of putting the Arab world and the rest of the world at loggerhead. So it's important to listen to the others. It's important to change our way of thinking, which is what this video is trying to teach us. Very often change starts exactly there, changing the way people think, changing the way they approach the world. Thank you.
Grande Roberto, una iniezione.
Great, Roberto. An adrenaline injection. I'm really sorry for the interpreters who will have to be carried away by an ambulance, probably. That's why we now probably have to apologize to them for the speed of the presentation, which was practically impossible to translate.